Okay, let's unpack this. You head to your usual coffee spot,
Right.
right? A few months back, that latte was maybe, what, 350?
Sounds about right.
Well, 450.
Yeah.
Same coffee, same size.
Yeah.
But yeah, it costs more.
Definitely.
And that's really what we're diving into today.
hmm
Inflation and, well, why everything just feels so darn expensive lately.
It's funny how that one small thing, your daily coffee, it really captures these huge economic shifts, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because at its heart, inflation is, well, it's basically prices for goods and services going up over time. And the
Mhm.
result, your money, it just doesn't buy as much. Its purchasing power goes down.
So that extra dollar for the latte.
Exactly. That's inflation in action, showing your money isn't stretching quite as far.
Hmm.
And we see it everywhere, right? Groceries, rent, gas, all the everyday stuff.
Yeah, it feels like your paycheck is shrinking, even if the number on it hasn't changed.
Mm.
It's like you're working just as hard, but you can buy less. Like
Mm.
running up an escalator that's going down.
That's a great analogy. You're putting in the effort, but losing ground.
So what's actually causing the squeeze? Let's really dig into the why.
Yeah. And, it's not just one simple thing. It's more like a perfect storm, really. A few key factors hitting at once.
Okay.
So one big one is an increase in the money supply. When, say, governments or central banks pump more money into the economy.
Right, like stimulus checks or certain bank policies.
Precisely. It means people generally have more money to spend, which sounds good, right?
But
But,
what happens when everyone suddenly has more cash, but the amount of stuff to buy hasn't really changed?
well, businesses notice. They
Mhm.
see people are more willing, maybe more able to spend a bit more.
Ah, okay. And this is where that classic supply and demand thing kicks in.
Exactly. If demand goes up, more people wanting stuff, but the supply stays level or maybe even drops.
Right.
What do businesses do?
They can raise prices
Hmm.
because they know someone will probably pay it.
That's it. Think about like hot concert tickets, loads of demand, limited seats, the price shoots up. Same basic principle, just economy wide.
Okay, that makes sense. More money chasing the same goods pushes prices up. Got it.
Mm.
What's another piece of the puzzle?
Another really big factor is rising costs for businesses themselves.
Okay.
Think about everything a company needs to operate. Raw materials, maybe oil, shipping things around the world.
Wages for their workers too, right?
Absolutely. Wages are a huge cost. So if any of those expenses go up significantly, what usually
They don't
happens?
just absorb it, do they?
Not usually, no. They often pass those higher costs straight on to us, the consumers, through higher prices.
Like the avocado example we saw. If it costs way more to ship avocados.
Then your guacamole at brunch is going to cost more. It's a direct pass-through.
Right, okay. Cost push. Makes sense.
And that connects really neatly to the third big reason, supply chain problems.
Oh yeah, we've heard a lot about those the last few years.
Definitely. Think about the pandemic, obviously. But also wars, natural disasters, anything that messes up the normal flow of making things and shipping things.
So factories closing, ships stuck at ports, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It creates scarcity. Suddenly there's just less stuff available.
And when things are hard to find.
People are often willing to pay more. Simple as that. If supply is tight, but demand is still there, prices tend to rise.
Like trying to buy hand sanitizer back in early 2020.
Perfect example. Prices went crazy because supply just vanished overnight.
Okay, so more money, higher business costs, and supply chain chaos. That's quite a mix. What's the fourth factor? You said this one was a bit different.
Yeah, this one's interesting. It's expectations.
Expectations. How does that work? Like economic psychology.
Sort of, yeah. It's the idea that if people believe prices will keep going up, that belief itself can actually help make it happen. It can become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Huh. Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, think about it. If you, as a worker, expect everything to get more expensive next year, what might you do when it's time for a pay review?
Ask for a bigger raise, obviously.
Keep up.
Right. And if businesses expect their costs to rise, maybe because they anticipate paying higher wages or just see inflation headlines everywhere.
They might raise their own prices now, just in case.
Exactly. They raise prices preemptively. So everyone's acting based on the expectation of inflation, and those actions collectively help bring about the very inflation they expected. It's a feedback loop.
Wow, okay. That's fascinating. So with all these causes, is inflation always bad? I mean, our sources hinted maybe a little bit is okay.
That's a really crucial point. No, it's not always bad. Actually, a small, steady amount of inflation, like maybe around 2% per year in many places,
Yeah.
is often seen as a sign of a healthy economy.
Healthy. How so?
Well, it usually means people are employed, they have money, they're spending it, businesses feel confident, maybe they're investing and growing. It suggests things are ticking along nicely. So a little bit of price increase shows the economy isn't stagnant.
Precisely. It indicates some dynamism. The real problems start when inflation gets high, and especially when it gets unpredictable and starts rising really fast.
Right. That's when things get scary.
Yeah, because then your savings start losing value quickly. It gets really hard for anyone, you, me, businesses to plan for the future.
And basic stuff just becomes unaffordable for lots of people.
Exactly. That's when you hear terms like cost of living crisis or warnings about a recession. High runaway inflation is definitely damaging.
Which unfortunately leads us right back to the big question everyone's asking now. Why is everything so expensive right now? It sounds like it really is that perfect storm you mentioned.
It really is. It's not just one thing. It's the convergence of several major hits. You had the pandemic, right? That massively disrupted production and shipping globally,
Yeah, factories shut down, ports clogged up.
which led to shortages of all sorts of things. Computer chips, lumber, even eggs at one point.
Right. And then on top of that disruption,
You layer on major geopolitical events like the
Yeah.
war in Ukraine, other political instability that really impacts things like fuel and food prices worldwide.
so energy costs go up, food costs go up.
Big time. And then remember the first point, the money supply. Government stimulus helped people through the pandemic, which was vital, but it also put a lot more money into the system, boosting demand.
Just when the supply of stuff was already squeezed because of the pandemic and wars.
You got it.
Yeah.
So the simple equation is kind of lots of money plus not enough stuff, prices go UP.
That sums it up pretty well. A tough combination.
Very tough.
Okay, so we understand the why a bit better now. What can actually be done about it? What tools do governments and central banks have to fight inflation?
Well, the main tools revolve around managing money in the economy, how much there is, and how expensive it is to borrow.
Okay.
So the classic move by central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the U.S., is to raise interest rates.
How does it help?
If it costs more to borrow money for a mortgage, a car loan, for businesses to invest, people and companies tend to borrow and spend less.
Ah, so it cools down demand.
Exactly. It acts like brakes on the economy, slowing down that spending pressure that pushes prices up.
Makes sense.
What else?
They can also slow down the creation of new money, sometimes called quantitative tightening, basically making money a bit harder to get.
Okay.
And governments can try to tackle those supply chain issues we talked about, try to get goods flowing more smoothly again, though that's often a longer-term fix.
It sounds like a really tricky balancing act, though.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly delicate.
Because if they raise interest rates too much or too fast, couldn't that tip the economy into a recession?
That's the big risk. Slam the brakes too hard and you cause a downturn, people lose jobs. But if you don't do enough...
Inflation just keeps running hot.
Exactly. Inflation could get entrenched, keep eroding savings, and cause longer-term instability. So policymakers have this incredibly tough job of trying to find that narrow path between controlling inflation and avoiding recession.
So next time you're, wincing at the grocery bill or the price of gas,
Yeah.
it helps to remember there's this whole complex global web of factors behind it. The money supply, business costs, shipping problems, even expectations.
Absolutely. And, one of the sources used a great analogy. Inflation is like a slow leak in a tire. You might not notice it minute by minute, but over time, it definitely affects the ride. It makes it harder to get where you're going.
That's really true. It hits everything, doesn't it? From the small stuff like buying lunch to the big things like planning for retirement or paying your rent or mortgage.
It touches every part of your financial life.
So understanding these causes, even just the basics we've talked about, it doesn't magically make prices lower, obviously,
Unfortunately not.
but it can maybe empower you a bit, help you make smarter choices about, say, budgeting or saving.
I think so. Understanding the why can help you navigate it better. Maybe adjust your spending, think differently about saving, or just honestly keep a cooler head when things feel chaotic and expensive.
Yeah, having that perspective helps.
It gives you context for what's happening around you.
So when you pick up that item off the shelf and think, wow, this has really gone up, just remember that complex web we talked about.
There's a lot going on behind that price tag.
Definitely. Which makes you wonder, what are some of the ripple effects, maybe the less obvious consequences of all this that we haven't even touched on? How does it subtly change our behavior or society in the longer run? Something to chew on, perhaps.